The number one trap in retirement. How to deal with it, how to beat it, how to combat it. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. This is Tyler Lively here with Sound Planning Group. Today I want to talk about one of the biggest traps, or the biggest trap in retirement, and how it can affect you, and then also how to combat it. As you prepare to tell your boss you got a 2-week notice or a month notice, and then walk away from those paychecks that you've been receiving for the last 20, 30, 40 years, the number one trap that I see people walk into is not knowing how much money they can spend every month of every year for the rest of your life. And you'll Google it, you'll say, how much do retirees retire on? And you'll see, it's going to be between 75 and 100% of their pre-retirement earnings based off of how much they've saved and their Social Security and things like that. And most of the time, you can kind of put some of the puzzle pieces together. I know what my Social Security is going to be. I know how much assets I have. Maybe I have a pension. Maybe I don't. Here's what my spouse's information is on, 401ks and Social Security and things like that. How do you know how much money you're going to have every month of every year for the rest of your life? Because knowing that allows you to be comfortable. Because if you think about it, if you have $1 more per month than you need every month of every year for the rest of your life, you're probably going to have fun. $1 more. We're good. We're comfortable. We're going to travel. We're going to do what we want. But if you have 1 penny less than what you need every month of every year for the rest of your life, that sounds horrible. That's not the retirement you've worked for. That's not the lifelong dream that you've been working towards. So understanding how much money you can live on every month of every year for the rest of your life is crucial. Now, here's some pointers. Again, first, it is important. It's very important to actually understand, not to the penny, but pretty close to the penny, how much you're spending on a monthly basis. Because what I actually see with retirees is that they spend very similar amounts, and sometimes even more, actually, usually even more, than the amount they're spending on a monthly basis prior to retirement. Because if you have 40 to 50 extra hours to do something, usually there's going to be more money involved with it. Usually. That's what I see what happens. So if you're spending, let's just use a nice round number. If you're spending $10,000 a month prior to retirement, usually what you're going to see is that you're going to be spending, or you can spend, or will be spending, $10,000, if not a little bit more, after retirement. But can your assets support that? Can your Social Security support that? Because sometimes people say, my Social Security is both of our Social Securities is going to add up to $5,000 a month, and then we'll take $5,000 a month from our investments. And Tyler, we're good. We got it. But if you think about it, what about inflation? What about sequence of returns risk, which I've mentioned in another video, which is, again, to define simply as negative returns early in retirement hurt significantly worse than they do later in retirement. So let's say it goes back to asset allocation. Where are your assets and how are they allocated to make sure that it can produce $5,000 a month, every year, growing with inflation for your lifetime? Because not knowing how much you can spend and overspending means the plan didn't work. What's interesting, though, too, is underspending. I have a lot of clients who have accumulated wealth. Maybe a few weeks ago, I had a client, wealthy, very wealthy, was self-employed, ran a business, sold a business, made great money. He told me a story in our meeting where he said, you know what, Tyler, I'm still just trying to work through living off of my assets. And I was on Amazon and I needed something, and it was $17. And I thought about it, and I didn't buy it. And I was like, Alan, my friend, you can afford $17. That is not going to make or break your plan at all. Go ahead and buy what you need. So going back to overspending is a really big deal, especially dealing with sequence of returns risk, inflation, and all those things. That's in your control. But underspending is also very difficult too, because most of my clients and most people that I meet on the street don't want to end up with millions of dollars to go their kids. Because the joke we say in the office with our clients is, you're not flying first class, then probably your kids will be. But again, step one is understand what you're currently spending. And I actually don't care what it is. Is it 10 grand a month? Is it 20 grand a month? Is it 3,000 a month? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but at least it's a starting point. And then working in a system with your Social Security, with your pensions, with your investments, we call them income guardrails. But what's the maximum you can spend on the upside? And essentially, if investments go down, right, if the market has a 30% hit, what does that mean for your investments? Or what does that mean for your income? Income guardrails. What's the high end? What's the bottom end? When do we have to make decisions that will impact the plan? Now, again, our goal as financial planners is to hopefully allow you to spend the top side of the income guardrail, but also to try to minimize the downside guardrail from happening, right? And that's what we've talked about with cash protection and risk, and allocating assets between those three buckets helps with protecting the upside, but also protecting your downside income guardrail. So first, understand what you're spending. Two, do an analysis with a financial planner on income guardrails. What's my top side? What's my downside? When would I have to make decisions that maybe I don't want to do? And how are we going to minimize the percentage or the possibility of those happening? And then the third thing is actually just continue to track what your expenses are. Because there's a research term called age banding. Michael Kitces did an excellent article on age banding in 2016, where he talked about how there's a lot of research that goes into that spending actually goes down in retirement. Usually not in the first kind of, let's say, hypothetically, the 10-year section. You'll hear it called in common vernacular as the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years of retirement. Usually in the go-go years, clients are going to spend a lot. You have the health, you have the energy, you have the money, you have the time. So you're going to spend. That's probably the area of time where you're going to do that safari to Africa or that trip to Galapagos. Most of the time, you're not going to see people doing that in their late 80s, right? So you spend a lot, and inflation actually hurts. And actually tracking expenses is really important. But there will come a time, again, usually ish, rule of thumb, it's around age 75, where you're into the slow go years. And actually spending naturally goes down. So what's interesting about that, again, is your income guardrails will actually change naturally. Spending goes down, inflation doesn't hurt as bad. And then in your no-go years, if you think about in your 80s, late 80s, usually you have two major costs, and it's food and medical. And depending on long-term care costs, right, that can be skyrocketing, and those income guardrails change again because you may need more income to pay for long-term care. If you don't go to long-term care, again, spending actually continues to go down. Again, the number one trap we see is not understanding how income fluctuates, how much you're spending, and then how much you can spend. Because the goal of retirement is to enjoy it. Our goal as financial planners is that you worry about your money less and you enjoy your time and your lives more. So hopefully this has been helpful in education. I've got the number one trap in retirement is just understanding how you can spend, why you can spend it, and then the contingency plans built around making sure you can do that. So come and talk to a financial planner today here at Sound Planning Group, and we can help establish those income guardrails. All right, see you soon.